Surya Kumar Yadav is a ridiculous little man, and I don't understand how some of his sixes go for six. And
Yeah.
that's my main sentiment in life. Welcome back to the Cricket Nerds. It is just me and Zach today, and we're going to be talking about four games that happened in the World Cup that were really entertaining. A lot of them went different ways. I think it's been the greatest World Cup that cricket has ever seen.
Yeah, it's been very tense the whole time, hasn't it,
Yeah,
really?
and everyone can beat anybody, as
Mm.
we've seen, as we will talk about. But first one we're going to talk about was a result that it kind of went the way that you'd expect. India versus Zimbabwe. Um, Now, first thing that I want to mention is King legend Rahul um, was he's come into form at just about the right time for India. It was another 50 off 35 rocks,
Mm.
and he looks good for it. What did you think?
Yeah, I think it's been a thing for a few players that when they play the less experienced teams or the not as good teams, they can use that opportunity to get into form.
Mm.
And in a minute we'll talk about Shaheen Sharafridi, who I think is definitely someone who did that. And KR Rahul as well. Like he's got 50s in the last two games, or he didn't get one in the last game, but the one before. Or maybe it has been the last two games. But yeah, his return to form at the top of the order is something that India will definitely want, especially going into the semi-finals, because he's the sort of person who can win a game single-handedly by scoring a big 100. Like he's got that ability in 2020 cricket. And when he gets going, it's awesome to watch. And he just seemed to look really fluent at the start of the innings. He didn't seem like he was trying to just hang around and nudge the ones or twos. He was looking like he was trying to fire from the off. And I think that's what India want from him, because especially with Rohit Sharma and Virat Kohli, who are there to provide that more of an anchor role, have someone like KR Rahul firing from the start is definitely what they're after. And then although Virat Kohli didn't really provide much this game like he has the rest of the tournament, Surya Kumar Yadav, as you said at the start, is some of the shots are absolutely outrageous, right from the school of AB de Villiers.
Yeah, it's
It's
the
just
shots
yeah,
that blow my mind. There were a couple that I can think of. So the one that he did a couple of times, I think, is where he'll sweep the wide Yorker for
yeah.
six over square leg. That
Mm.
is a shot that I don't understand how he gets so much power. That's unreal. And then the other ones are where he's just do you see the six that he just did like over his head where he just flicked it like that? It's just
Yeah, yeah.
honestly, he is like AB de Villiers in that way that there's just the bowlers can bowl anywhere they like. There is a way that it's going to go for six, and the batsman knows where you're going to bowl it. It's just you get that flow state, and
It
oh
it's like he's got a plan for every delivery, but the
yeah,
plan is absolutely outrageous.
yeah,
Like when I play on a Saturday, I'm thinking if they bowl it straight, then I'm going to do this. If they bowl it leg side, and it's normally just some boring shot into a gap, maybe so I can steal a run. For him, it's just if they bowl it straight, I'm flicking it back over my head for six. And then if it's wide outside of off stump, I'm going to scoop it to the leg side. Yeah, it's just
and
absolutely
everything's a
ridiculous.
helicopter shot.
Yeah. It's innovation done right. And I think that's the important thing, is that he's thought about it and he's practiced it. I saw a picture on Facebook of a European game, and there's one player who decided to bat behind his stumps. And I'm like, that's just innovation gone stupid. Like, what's he trying to do there?
A
Yeah, just
genius,
absolutely unreal.
legend of the game.
Genius. But yeah, we've not seen that in the World Cup, which is probably a good thing. So yeah, it was just I, I remember seeing Cricinfo's updates on it as well, and they were saying things like Yadav and Pandya providing impetus at the end of the innings, and I was watching it thinking Pandya's not really doing much. He's just giving the strike to Sky because his shot making is unreal.
Yeah.
Um, I noticed, and I want to get your opinion on this. They brought in Rishabh Pant for Dinesh Karthik, because Dinesh Karthik, bless him, he's not had the best tournament, but I don't think he's really been. he's not really been needed because India's top 3 or 4 have been firing throughout. And then Rishabh Pant comes in and he only gets 3 or 5. And he must have been pretty annoyed at that. What's your thoughts on this? Do you think India should be just sticking with Dinesh Karthik, or do you think they should be showing more faith to Rishabh Pant?
I mean, I wish somebody could figure out how much it is to buy Rishabh Pant a run in T20 because the guy has not been able to do anything for a while now. And I feel bad for him because he's a really good player, but I still don't think they've got that clarity of role for him and it doesn't work. So personally, I'd stick with Dinesh. I think he's proven that he is really good. And even if his returns recently haven't been that great, he can still do it. Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I'm looking at his matches in the World Cup, and it's pretty pitiful. Like 1 did not bat, 6 and 7. So that's not great.
No.
But again, how much chance does he get? He's coming in with like 6 balls to go, and in general, it's been like Virat Kohli has been on 60 or 70 when he's come in, or Surya Kumar Yadav has come in, and he's more playing the supportive role and not as much the dynamic finisher. And I think that's generally going to lend itself more to you're just trying to get the other person on strike. So however, I don't think you can read into it too much.
No, I would say that I think Dinesh Karthik has more of a defined role in the side than Rishabh Pant. Like, that when Dinesh Karthik comes in, it's his role of a finisher, which is important. And there's been one game where Dinesh Karthik came in with about 6 overs to spare, or maybe 7 overs to spare. And that's almost too early for him. You want him in at the last 3 overs because he can strike it from ball 1. He has that ability. And I think even though he's had a few failures, like in the pressure situation where you need something like 30 off the last 2 overs, I'd prefer to see him come in than someone like Rishabh Pant. And I think Rishabh Pant, if Sky wasn't doing ridiculous things at number 4, Virat Kohli wasn't returning to form, and Rohit Sharma was struggling at the top of the order, definitely have Rishabh Pant in there to provide that cement, I guess. Whereas at the moment, with India's batting the way it is, having Dinesh Karthik, the finisher, coming in at the end, I think that's a much better option for them. But I know we've got a lot of Indian fans who watch this podcast, so let us know your thoughts. Who would you prefer to see in that role?
I've got one more question on the India batsman, because Surya Kumar Yadav has reached this kind of flow state where he's just ridiculous. And looking at England, right? When England discovered how good Jos Buttler was, they were like, he's our best white ball player. They said, we need him to open because maximum you're likely to face 70, 80 deliveries in a T20. So you want your best player to have the best chance of facing as many of them as they can. Yeah, is the mentality. So and that was always Ed Smith's kind of philosophy. And he'd always have said that AB de Villiers should have opened in T20s because he was so good that you want to maximize the chance of him facing as many balls as possible. You don't want him to just come in for the last 4 overs because that's a waste. Is Surya Kumar Yadav getting to the point where he's too good and you should actually have him in like an opening position?
Well, he's had those sorts of roles for Mumbai Indians. I think I've seen him in every position in the top 4. I think the year that he really came to the fore as this person who's like, oh, I've never heard of this person, he's ridiculously good, was when he was playing for Kolkata Knight Riders, I think, and they batted him at number 3. So I don't think there's much. I can see him having that role as an opening batsman. However, I think it would take a lot for India to go away from the current players they have in those top 3 positions. Yeah, I don't see, say, Rohit Sharma coming in at 4 or Virat Kohli coming in at 4. I think those top 3 would remain as the top 3. Whether it should happen like that, I don't know.
Well, that's the thing.
Yeah.
You need to make those big decisions, because that ended up being like Bairstow gets forced to come in at 4 then, and he turned out to be pretty good. So yeah, there are. I do understand it, but it's an interesting question to ask. What did you think of the Zimbabwe bowlers and their performance? Because I thought the fielding was generally pretty good. I saw one major cock up with off Ryan Burles bowling. There was a 6 that went just over the fielder, and then the next ball, I think it was just a deep mid wicket kind of slog from KL Rahul, and the fielder had just run in or started in too far. And if he was on the boundary, KL Rahul would have been out quite a bit earlier. So that was the main thing I saw. But overall, I thought it was relatively decent. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, I think Zimbabwe pulled it back as well after a fairly decent start from Rahul and Kohli, because they got Kohli, Rahul, and Rishabh Pant in fairly quick succession, and they were about 100 for 4 with 6 overs to go. And I was like, oh, Zimbabwe have pulled this back really well. All they need to get is one of Sky and Pandya, and they're in at the tail. However, that wasn't the case. And as I said earlier, Pandya and Sky put on a really good partnership, as we saw. And when players like that get going, it doesn't matter who your bowlers are. You can be the best team in the world, and it's hard to stop that momentum. And I just don't think Zimbabwe had the skill to rest that momentum. And when I saw that India had got over 140, I was like, that's beyond Zimbabwe now. That as good as they have been, and I'm so glad to see them back in a major tournament, because they, for a while, they were kind of dwindling behind teams like Ireland, the Netherlands, Scotland, and they're now coming back into that, which I think is really good for their cricket. So yeah, it's good.
Does it mean that they've? I need to look at the table, but does it mean that they've now qualified for the next? Oh no, they haven't. No, so they'll be in the qualifiers along with Bangladesh, Afghanistan, Ireland. So Netherlands don't have to qualify next season, which is pretty amazing. So yeah, just we'll finish off on this with just a brief chat about the India bowlers, because I'd say it was an all-round pretty decent performance. Axar Patel has somehow just started going for tons of runs in the World Cup, whereas before no one could hit him off the square. That's my main question. But other than that, I'd say it was all-round brilliance, wasn't it?
Yeah, and again, it's just too good for a team like Zimbabwe. I think India are one of the teams that when they come against stiff opposition, but not stiff opposition, when they come up against opposition which you would think they should easily beat, they tend to beat them. They're not like a Pakistan or an England or a South Africa who would choke against that sort of team. And it was just clinical and ruthless and what they needed to do. And I think Zimbabwe actually did well to get up to 115 because India weren't giving anything away. And they've got their 3 fast bowlers in Bhuvi, Arshdeep and Mohammad Shami have been awesome all tournament. And so for Zimbabwe to get even close to that score was going to be really hard. But the thing with Axar Patel, I wouldn't be surprised if they maybe bring in Yuzvendra Chahal against England, given England's batting record against Chahal. Although England's record against Axar Patel isn't that much better, is it?
Yeah, and also Axar Patel, like even though he hasn't yet fired with the bat, I think just knowing that he's there at 7, that's the mentality. Like it does make a big difference batting deep, and I think that's been one of the main things for India this tournament. Is like traditionally they've always had really talented batsmen, but they've always paced the innings just slightly wrong, maybe left a few runs out on the field. Whereas now they're doing this far more aggressive mindset, and I think it's because they can bat so deep. So I would, if I was an Indian coach, I would say, no, we keep the deep batting lineup. As good as Chahal is, I think, like I'm looking at that bowling attack and I'm like, I'd say it's pretty good. It's good enough to beat any team in world sport. So yeah, it was a resounding victory for India and be a good match between them and England. Now that both teams have qualified for the semi-finals. Speaking next, so who have we got next? We're going reverse order. So
Bangladesh.
Pakistan, Bangladesh. Wow.
Yeah.
Pakistan, how have they scraped through?
It's ridiculous because they should have been out, and they would have been out had South Africa not cocked up against the Netherlands. However, they seized their chance and they played a really good game. I thought that they were really good in their bowling innings, especially Shaheen Sharafridi. I mean, that man, like, just the way he bowls is just so easy to watch. And it's just, you know how when you watch Jasprit Bumrah, you're like, this guy, it just doesn't look right, but it's effective. Shaheen Sharafridi, it looks right and it's effective.
Yeah,
I
looks
just
good.
really enjoy. Yeah,
it's
I really
very
enjoy
easy on the eyes.
And then also Iftikhar Ahmed, who is becoming one of Pakistan's favorite players at the moment.
And mine.
Everything I'm seeing on Facebook is just, and all the memes. It's just how good Iftikhar Ahmed is because of how he batted in the last game. But his bowling this game was really economical and just really accurate and exactly what Pakistan needed to keep Bangladesh to a score which they could easily chase. Because if Bangladesh had scored a tricky score of like 140, 150, then the nerves would have set in, I think, and Pakistan would have maybe choked like South Africa did. However, to only need 128, Pakistan are just too good a team to mess up with that, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Now, Babar Azam has done a grand total of basically nothing this whole tournament.
Yeah, really struggled.
And Mohammed Rizwan also hasn't really shown up. So it is amazing, to be honest, based on the information that we knew beforehand, that Pakistan has managed to qualify pretty much just on their middle order, but more so on their bowling attack. And that's easier to believe because their bowling attack is unreal and they have performed incredibly well consistently. Shadab Khan, I rated him so highly going into the World Cup, and I keep that high rating. Iftikhar Ahmed was someone that I wasn't aware of before the 7-match T20 series, really.
Yeah.
But wow, he's really impressed me. So yeah, like Pakistan's chase, it was pretty seamless, wasn't it? It was pretty easy for them. I liked the fact that they did a bit of an England. And they shuffled around their order quite a bit because Shan Masood ended up coming in at 5.
Yeah, he's kind of fashioning himself as a 2020 middle order batter at the moment, which is actually quite effective in a way because he's not going to upset the Azam Rizwan pairing at the top, but also he's too good a batsman to leave out.
Yeah.
Like he's just technically very good. So yeah, you're not going to leave out him, especially in the form he's in. So yeah, it works.
Yeah. And you know what? Why not? When you're chasing 128, why not shuffle around the order for a bit? Have a bit of a laugh with it. Yeah, just a bit of a clinic once again. The Fizz bowled well. I think Nasum Ahmed, not tasking this time. Nasum,
yeah,
he bowled well. But other than that, there's only so much a bowling attack can do when they're defending 130.
Yeah, so, I thought that they needed. I thought at the halfway stage, the only way Bangladesh are going to win this is if Taskin Ahmed gets a couple wickets early. Because if you lose 2 or 3 wickets in the power play when you're chasing that sort of a total, it kind of puts into question, okay, how are we going to go about this chase? Because we've lost wickets early, so we can't attack now. But also, if we defend, that might allow the bowlers to just bowl us, and then that will build the pressure. And I think although Pakistan started slowly, they did the right thing. I think Rizwan and Azam are very experienced customers, and they knew if we get to that 10 over mark without losing any wickets, then this chase is basically done. And that's what they did. They were less than a run a ball at the 10 over mark, but they'd got their wicketless. And for that sort of chase, that's all they needed. So yeah, Pakistan through. Awesome. Facing New Zealand in the semi-final. And I think that's going to be a great game. So should we move on to talk about the upset? One of many upsets this tournament. There have been 6, I think, that I've seen going around. And this one was probably the most embarrassing. All South Africa had to do was beat the Netherlands. who were down and out, and they would have qualified. And yeah, it was just a bit of a cringe.
It was
Yeah,
incredible, actually. To
yeah,
I think the phrase that I used a lot during the last Ashes was, we've managed to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory.
yeah,
In fact, no, I use that a lot when I'm talking about Punjab.
yeah.
It's a hard life, and that's how it felt with South Africa, because the Netherlands didn't do very well, to be honest. Like, in their batting innings, they only got 158, which isn't terrible, but it's not the best score you've ever seen.
It was
But
too much, though.
but it was too much based
Mm.
on the bowling attack that South Africa have, and I just thought they bowled really badly. I thought they deserved every run they conceded,
Mm.
and it was yeah. I mean, it wasn't even like Max O'Dowd did nothing, which that's almost quite refreshing for Netherlands, because they don't need to just rely on him, as
Yeah.
even though he's been their best run scorer.
Mm.
It was nice to see other players come to the fore. Tom Cooper did really well, and Colin Ackerman, who I believe, is he Zimbabwean or
I think
South
he's from
African?
South Africa. Yeah,
Yeah,
born in South Africa.
yeah. So that's always nice to see a bit of revenge. And he did really well. So yeah, it was an interesting batting performance from the Netherlands. I thought they just capitalized well on any bad deliveries, and they really put the pressure on the South African bowlers, which I don't think South Africa were expecting.
I don't think South Africa prepared that well either. There just didn't seem to be any willingness to change their approach. There, like Kagiso Rabada was just bowling pace the whole time. There was no thought of, let's bowl some slower balls, let's target the stumps, bowl some Yorkers, really put these batsmen under pressure. Because we're talking Kagiso Rabada, who is normally one of the top wicket takers in the IPL, which is probably the biggest 2020 tournament in the world. And yet he went at over 12 and over and looked toothless, really, against a batting lineup which isn't that good against pace bowling. And so, yeah, it was just that Anrik Nortje was the only one who looked dangerous. He was the only one who looked like applying pressure on the Netherlands batsmen and taking wickets. And because he was the only one, it meant that they could just play him out and then just score runs against the rest. And I do think Netherlands did bat well. They capitalized on bad bowling, and Lungi Ngidi as well. Like, we've been praising him all tournament for being like this find of, he's someone who's been flying under the radar and has come to the fore for South Africa. And again, he did the same thing. He didn't look like he wanted to change his approach at all, or maybe throw in a few slower balls, mix things up a bit. And yeah, it was disappointing from a bowling point of view, and then also a batting point of view.
Yeah, because I personally, even though Netherlands, like they got a few more than they should have done on that track based on the bowlers that were bowling, but they, like I say, the bowlers deserve to concede that many runs. But I would still expect this South African side to be able to chase that, like 159 on any track, even if it's an absolute Bunsen. They should be chasing that. They've got real world-class quality, and they made it look really, really difficult. And I think I do want to say absolute credit has to go to the Netherlands bowlers, because they had a plan and they really stuck to it. But yeah, what did you think of the embarrassment that was South Africa's batting?
They made a lot of starts. They did the hard bit and then they got out. And that was the embarrassment for me. It was seeing these batsmen get in. They had the opportunity to take the momentum back into their favor, and they just didn't capitalize on it. And I think that was the problem. And I think part of the issue is that it was as if all the batsmen were looking at each other. They were looking for someone to stand up. And if you contrast that with England, and we'll come to talk about England now, but if you contrast that with England, someone like Ben Stokes, his role is, I'm the person who is going to take this game into my hands. I'm going to win the game for the team. And there was no one in that South African lineup who looked like doing that. You're not going to get it from Temba Bavuma, who, in my opinion, should resign from 2020 cricket after this game. For the good of the team, really, because it's like they're playing with 10 men. Even though he's had one good game, he's been awful. It's also not going to come from players like Heinrich Klaassen either, who is more of a holding role in the middle order. The players who should have been looking to step up and win the game was Quinton de Kock and David Miller. They're the two big stars in that lineup, and they just didn't seem to stand up and offer what South Africa needed, and it's such a shame.
It really is. But there we go. The chokers are out. It's sad to see because they had such a strong start to the tournament. I thought from kind of an outside bet, I think I called them the dark horses in our preview, to then crashing and burning. And it was there for them, I thought. So yeah, that's a big shame for them, but it is what it is.
I've actually gone from wanting an England-South Africa final to potentially an India-Pakistan final.
Yes. I love that that's a possibility. That will be absolutely massive.
Yeah.
Should we move on now to Sri Lanka versus England? Because if we think about Temba Bavuma, somebody an opener that hasn't really done anything, and then in one game was suddenly really good. That's how I felt about Pathum Nissanka, because he has done very little in this tournament so far, and suddenly produced an innings of a lifetime against England. I said in the last video that I'm not going to enjoy watching it. I said it was just going to be so tense. It was going to be really close. And I was absolutely right, because Nissanka, what an opening start from him. 67 off 45.
Yeah, we had glimpses of it in the Asia Cup of what he could do. And I think to have him fire for Sri Lanka, they'd kind of been missing it all tournament to have that at the top of the order. But I think the intent of the Sri Lankan batsmen early on was so good. There were hardly any dot balls. England weren't bowling badly, but when they did, the ball went the distance. They weren't hitting fours, they were hitting sixes. And when it was a good ball, it would be nudged for one. It would be nudged into the gap, and they'd get those ones and twos. And I think that intent was there at the start. And England needed to wrest the momentum away because the momentum was with Sri Lanka. But then Liam Livingstone's catch to get rid of Mendes that was such a good catch.
I was very, very impressed. And he's shown himself to be a gun fielder. And if he ends up, if he carries on the way that he's started in his international career, he's going to go pretty well, because, he's a gun fielder. His bowling has come on so much in the last couple of years. And obviously he's a batter that can do really good things. My only problem with him at the moment is his application, his mindset when he's batting. But yeah, no, I thought that was a brilliant catch, and he bowled pretty well. I thought he was unlucky to go for as many runs as he did. I thought Adil Rashid, though, was pick of the bowlers for me. He kept it so tight, and I mean, I don't know what was going through Nissanka's head when he decided to charge down the wicket to Rashid in his last over. But that was the turning point for the game. That's what stopped Sri Lanka getting, the extra 10, 20 runs that they could have done. And they really left a few on the field.
Yeah, and I thought that England were very, very good at understanding the situation, because England have been in this situation a lot. I think one of the worries for England a few years ago was they built this really good white ball squad. They're dominating in one-day matches and 2020 matches. But how are they going to do in the knockout stages of a tournament? And this game was a knockout. You win, you're through, you lose, you're out. This England team is experienced enough in those situations to think, right, if I'm in a situation where I'm finding it difficult, all I need to do is just wait, because I know that the opposition is going to make a mistake.
Yeah.
And I know eventually if I keep bowling well, if I keep bowling to a plan, eventually I can win back the momentum. And that's what happened. They didn't really panic, which we've seen England do in the past. especially in those crunch games. They didn't panic. They just waited. That wicket of Livingston, that catch of Livingston of Chris Woakes bowling came. They got the breakthrough, and then it was a case of applying the brakes. And I think they did that really well, especially with Adil Rashid bowling in that middle. I don't know what you want to say about Adil Rashid, but I think he's bowled really well in that last game.
Yeah, I thought it was outstanding. He used the helpful surface because it was a spinner's track, and he used it perfectly. He gave his lengths were so much better in this game compared to like some of the games where he hasn't been as effective. He just he nailed the lengths and he used his variations really well, I thought, because the batsman had no idea what was coming.
Yeah.
I've got to say, the death bowling from England was just perfect. Really dragged it back, and you're absolutely right. They applied so much pressure to the Sri Lankan batsman that bowling attack is something that we're just not used to. The fact that we can actually, in the back end of a match, we can close down the runs. And I thought the bowling changes from Butler were really good once again. He seems like he's just trusting his instincts now.
He's
Instead
finding
of
his feet as a captain, isn't he?
Yeah, instead of it was a bit formulaic before. It was like, right, okay, well it's middle overs, so I guess I just bowl my spinners, right? Because that's what you do. Or it'll have been something that like they prepared way in advance, but it seems like he's thinking on his feet a bit more, and it's coming across in the game because every bowling change seems to just make the batsman think a bit more, and that's what you want. You want people to have to think, because when you're batting your best, you're not thinking, you're just batting. And going on to England's batting, they weren't thinking.
No,
because we got the best start I think we've got in the whole tournament, didn't we?
Yeah, it was really good. Butler and Hales. They're both such destructive players that if they both have a good day, you know you're in for a treat. And yeah, when I saw Hales smashing it about, I was like, this is all we need, really. Just one player to score a 70 or 80, just finish the game with 3 overs to spare. And we're on course for that. And then Alex Hales went through his shot just a little bit too early and just toe-ended it back to Hasaranga. And that was a hard wicket to watch. I was like, that sort of luck, that's the sort of thing that can bring us down and lose us this game. Yeah. And like I said earlier, it took the cool, I've been here before, Ben Stokes to get us home. And I said it before the tournament in our preview with Cricket for Us. Ben Stokes, he's in the tournament for this reason. Yeah. He's in the tournament for these crunch games where you need 140, you need 150, and you just want someone to bat the innings, and he did it perfectly.
Yeah, and awesome. I think, you know, we spoke a couple of matches ago about Ben Stokes' defined role. That he doesn't have one. However, David Malan going injured in the bowling innings, which obviously you hate to see, but it meant that Stokes batted at 3, and I think that is where Stokes is going to do the best, because that is a defined role. He knows exactly where the innings is going the whole way, it did seem like he was able to pace himself really well. And you're right, he's got such a cool head compared to Harry Brook, Liam Livingstone, Moeen Ali, and Sam Curran, who all 4 of those, after that batting performance, really need to look at what they did again. They need to revisit it because it wasn't good enough. Any one of those should be able to take us home from that situation. It wasn't a lot of runs. We were under a run a ball for quite a long time in that, and yet the shot selection and the mindset behind it was just stupid. And Liam Livingstone's done this a few times, and it's always in the matches where you're chasing the low totals. He'll go for the big shot, and it's like, if he gets it, fair enough, you've relieved a bit of pressure or whatever, but let's think about risk versus reward here. If we're batting first and we're trying to set the big total, it's probably worth it, you know, because there are people to come after you that can also apply the pressure. But when you're chasing the small totals, wickets matter a lot more. And Liam Livingstone's value on his wicket was low. Harry Brook, he just hasn't been able to buy a run this tournament, and it's quite sad to see because you know how good he could be. He showed that glimmer of potential in Pakistan.
Yeah.
Moeen, I thought it was a stinky wicket. Like he wasn't playing a stupid shot, really. It was a bad shot. And then Sam Curran again just seemed really tied up and tried to play a crazy shot for 6. So those 4 I was disappointed with. What was your opinion on our middle order?
I understand sending Harry Brook in at 4 because England at that point only needed 70 runs, not even 70 runs. And they had loads of time left. They needed less than 6 and over. And you can understand them sending in a Harry Brook at that stage to think if he bats through, he's got form going into the semi-finals, which he needs. Same with Liam Livingstone. However, if you're thinking about it sensibly, then England should have sent Moeen Ali in at 4 because David Milan was injured, not able to bat. They needed that experience. And although I know Moeen Ali got out playing a stupid shot, at that point, the pressure was on when it didn't need to be.
Yeah.
And so I think having Moeen Ali at 4 would have been good. And I also think Sam Curran's wicket, I actually don't mind how he got out because at that stage, it was the last ball of an over. And if he'd have got that 6, then we would have only needed like 2 runs from the last over.
Yeah.
And if or even just 1 run, and if he didn't get the 6, Stokes is on strike and
Wokes is in.
It's not the end of the world and Wokes is in. So I understood that bit. And I was thinking the best option for Sam Curran right now is to try and hit a 6. So when he was out, I was like, it doesn't matter.
I just think I felt going towards that. They weren't milking the singles as much as they should have been. And that was a shame to see.
Yeah. Sri Lanka's spinners, Hasaranga and Dhananjaya, we've said it all tournament, and Theekshana as well. Their spinners are 3 of the best 2020 spinners in the world. And they are so good throughout those middle overs. And to have someone like Lahiru Kumara who bowls 140 Ks plus consistently, and he's bowled really well. I think Sri Lanka have a really good side and they've shown a lot of promise and they've won the Asia Cup recently. And I can see them turning into a white ball force in the near future. So good things from them. And England are through. Australia are out in their own tournament. So crazy.
Yeah, mental stuff. Right, we'll move on very quickly to Cricket Nerds questions, where PD, absolute legend of the game, thank you very much, PD, has left us a couple. So the first one is, could you please share your thoughts on fake fielding? So he personally feels quite firmly that the striking batsman must pay attention towards the direction he just hit the ball and the fielders approaching the ball, while the non-striking batsman must be mindful of the fielders around the ball. If someone feigns clumsiness or pretends to throw the ball towards my end, how is that going to affect me as a runner? Unless somebody obstructs my path, I'm in no position to whine and complain about fake fielding while hiding my inability to focus and run. That's just my thought. I disagree with PD on this because, first of all, the ball's very small. So, and it's very easy to, if you're at the far end of a pitch, right on the boundary, to fake that you're throwing it in or that you've collected the ball cleanly or whatever. And I just think it's I'm going to say the spirit of the game. It's against the spirit of the game. It's just, I think it's a bit of a scummy thing to do. And I do like that it's against the rules because it's so easy to do. And also, I think just to say it's the batsman's responsibility. First of all, if the ball's gone behind him, does that mean it's then the non-striker's responsibility? It's all very subjective, I think. But I do personally, I think don't fake fielding because you don't need to. Just field well.
Yeah, I think there's an element of situation about it, because I think that if I've never seen a situation where someone has fake fielded and it's caused the batsman's issues and it's led to a run out. I've never actually seen it with
De Kock pretended to catch the ball, didn't he? That time. It was like last year. I'm sure he pretended to catch the ball and then the batsman ran back, or he was pretending to go
Okay.
the other end, or it was something like that.
Yeah. Well, I've never seen it. I guess that there can be opportunities, but I've never been seen it used in terms of going against the spirit of the game. I feel like that would be quite rare. However, I have seen it used in a jokey way. And when you're playing it like on a midweek friendly or a Sunday game, then you might see it from people just because it's a bit funny. But I can understand why they've got the penalty runs situation, that if you fake field, it's penalty runs, because in an international match, the last thing you want is someone doing a dummy and then it goes against the spirit of the game. I feel like in rugby, they have fake passes, and that's how they get around people. And in a way, cricket maybe should have those elements, but spirit of the game, that comes first, right?
That intangible thing that a few people have decided.
It's just just Lords. Right?
Just
Lords Cricket Ground.
Marylebone Cricket Club. It's
Oh yeah.
Right.
Definitely.
Second question is: assume yourself as the president of the ICC. Could you please spend 2 minutes? Oh, that's a long time. 50 seconds at most. 15 seconds at most. Describing the ways, realizable ways or realistic ways, you could improve the cricket status among the associate nations. That's an interesting one. I think personally that every team should be allowed to play Test cricket. That's my personal opinion. I think Test cricket is the most beautiful and pure form of the game. If you want to organize it, if you want to play a Test, absolutely you should be allowed to, because how else are you going to test, how good you are as a pure cricketer? There's no other way. You can't do it in white ball as much. So that's my opinion, and that's probably what I'd do. What about you?
I would increase the number of players, the number of teams in the global tournaments. 2020 especially. I think looking at Test cricket, that requires extra funding and issues going on there. And Test cricket's a different level. Whereas 2020 cricket, I would say there's probably 10 teams in the world, 12 might be pushing it, who, when the teams play each other, you could say any team could win on their day. We've seen it with Netherlands versus South Africa today. We've seen it with West Indies versus Scotland, Sri Lanka versus Scotland and Namibia. We've seen those different results happen. And I think, it could go either way. So I think if you had, like in the football, where you have the two top seeds are in 4 different groups, and then you've got 2 teams, that would make a 16-team tournament, which I think would work well. And then you'd have qualifying before that, and that introduces more of the associate nations. So I think increasing the numbers of the 2020 World Cup would have a massive impact. And then as those teams, as we're seeing, start to improve, then introduce them into the one-day cricket. And then maybe later on, Test cricket, like with Ireland and Afghanistan. So I
think that's a good idea. Thank you very much for sending your Cricket Nerd question in. If you would like to be featured in that section, please leave a question in the comments down below. Thank you very much for watching. You can follow our social medias in the description down below once again. You can also listen to our podcast. We are on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and more. Other than that, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for the continued support, and we'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.